When I was doing some research for a couple of recent videos, I came across a passage I had highlighted in the book, The Legend of the Jews by Louis Ginsberg, that was referring to multiple Earths. At first I thought, is this another legend of multiple ages that I forgot about when I did my earlier video on the Golden Age and multiple ages before the present that ancient civilizations told stories about? But after reading it again, I realized that maybe it didn't really read like other stories of multiple ages. But what really struck me as interesting is the description of animals with human heads and others with human bodies with animal heads. This sounds a lot like what ancient Jewish people would have seen from the mythologies of their neighbors, the Egyptians, Persians, and Greeks. So my second thought was maybe the original writer of the story was just referring to faraway places on Earth with an uppercase E, because the word Earth with a lowercase e just referred to the ground. Ancient people didn't necessarily have a concept of how large the Earth actually was. That's Earth with an uppercase E. So when they referred to the Earth with a lowercase e, they were just talking about the ground of the planet. So basically, we've named the planet after the ground. But anyway, after rereading it again, I don't think the faraway places is what the storyteller was saying either. But first, what is The Legend of the Jews? It's not a book I think a lot of people are familiar with these days. Louis Ginsberg was a Jewish scholar, and he compiled together stories from Jewish folklore and put them together in chronological order. The stories would be part of what they would call the Aggadah, which are rabbinical, non-legalistic stories and explanations. In Christianity, these stories would be considered apocryphal. But Ginsberg compiled them together and paraphrased them into a cohesive narrative that makes it read a lot like how the Old Testament reads, just with a lot of different details than what the actual Old Testament canon says. So sometimes it's hard to say what all might be accurate and what might be made-up fantasy. I mean, there are some things you can tell are just factually wrong, but there are other things where it's hard to say for sure one way or the other. But I view it a lot like how I view old mythologies like the Egyptians, Greeks, or Mayans, which is to say I think some of it may be based on fact and reality, but a lot of it is fantasy or just lost in translation. But it's hard to say how much of it might be fact and how much is fantasy. So I mainly just look to the legends of the Jews as an additional reference or for making comparison to mythologies of other cultures. I won't read this whole passage, but I'll read the highlighted part. Tebel, the second Earth, is the first mainland inhabited by living creatures, 365 species, all essentially different from those of our own Earth. Some have human heads set on the body of a lion or a serpent or an ox. Others have human bodies topped by the head of one of these animals. Besides, Tebel is inhabited by human beings with 2 heads and 4 hands and feet, in fact, with all their organs doubled, excepting only the trunk. It happens sometimes that the parts of these double persons quarrel with each other, especially while eating and drinking, when each claims the best and largest portions for himself. If this isn't a tale of multiple ages from the past or talking about far-off distant lands from the past, then what is it? It seems to me the storyteller sees this as layers of Earth, where one layer is on top of another layer, and so on. The storyteller saw the sky above as being separated into 7 levels, and viewed the Earth as having 7 levels. So there was the Earth, or ground, he was standing on, and 6 more grounds beneath him. The thing is, the storyteller also refers to a time when God brought forth the new heavens and new earth, which does sound kind of like the layers might be viewed as different eras in time as well. He also goes on to say that God brought forth 196,000 worlds that God created unto his own glory. I'm not sure what to make of that statement. It sounds like the storyteller is referring to other planets in the galaxy or universe because he doesn't say Earth, meaning ground, but actually says worlds. So it seems like he also believes other worlds exist out there. I find it interesting that a storyteller who would view our world as being multi-layered, maybe like a flat Earth kind of belief, would also believe there are other planets out there. What does he believe the other planets are like? Are they round or flat? Does he think the other worlds have multiple layers too? So after rereading this passage several times now, this is kind of how I'm viewing it. I do think the storyteller does view the first 6 Earths as earlier eras in time, with the time of mythological creatures of the Egyptians, Persians, and Greeks spoke of and worshipped being the most recent of the earlier eras. The thing is, I'm not sure how old the story this passage in the book is based on. Ginsberg compiles stories written down at different points in time, but put them in chronological order based on what the story is telling. This would have been based on rabbinical-era Judaism, folklore, and texts, so some of the stories are ancient, but others could be from the medieval period. I don't know how old this particular bit of folklore is. I assume it is after the time of polytheistic religions ruling the region, so probably after the Roman Empire adopted Christianity. I don't know that. I'm just guessing here. I also think this is probably a long time before the time of professional archaeology as a science, but I suspect the original storyteller did live in a time where he understood that when a city is abandoned, over time it begins to deteriorate and can get covered up by sand or by foliage, depending on the climate of where you are. It would be sand in his region, though. I think this is how he viewed the 6 lower levels of Earths, his earlier eras in time, that have since been abandoned and covered up. If he was living in the Christian era of Roman times, or sometime in the medieval period, he might have seen the depictions of the old Greek and Egyptian gods and chimeras, which would have already been in the long past by then, and associated that with the Earth just before his present Earth. As for the 196,000 worlds, I'm guessing he thought there were other worlds out there besides our own Earth. I'm not sure what he thought they were like, because I'm not sure if he understood our Earth was round or if he thought it was flat or something else. But whatever he thought of our Earth, whether flat or round, I assume he thought the other 196,000 worlds were designed that way too. So anyway, this passage was just a curiosity for me that I decided to run with a little bit here. Sometimes it's interesting to read what ancient people thought about things. In the present, we have the benefit of having collected vast amounts of knowledge over time and learning new things with scientific methods, and with the internet, it's easy to find all of that knowledge. I like looking at ancient stories, though, because even with all the knowledge we have collected now, we don't necessarily know how much has been forgotten along the way. The ancient storyteller didn't have access to the collective knowledge I have available to me today, but he may have known or had access to information available in his time that has since been lost. Maybe his perspectives on reality and history have been partially shaped by a bit of knowledge that has since been lost to history. Anyway, I find it fun to look at these old stories with the benefit of the modern knowledge we have now and try to figure out where the ancient storyteller was coming from and maybe learn something new along the way. Those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for listening.